My children, I will now take you back in time to the golden age of the Ottoman Empire. Once upon a time, there was a sultan who defined the borders of the East and the West, ruled on land and sea, and was renowned for his justice and might, Suleiman the Magnificent. In the pages of history, they call him Suleiman the Magnificent. Why? To understand this, let's dive into his story together. Sultan Suleiman was born in Trabzon on November 6, 1494. His father was Yavuz Sultan Selim and his mother was Ace Hafsa Sultan. From an early age, Suleiman stood out with his intelligence, courage and fondness for learning. He had accompanied his father in his duties as Sanjak Bey and learned state affairs at a young age. Yavuz Sultan Selim took great care to give his son Suleiman experience both on the battlefields and in state administration. Suleiman was only 26 years old when he ascended the throne in 1520 after his father's death. But despite his young age, he was a wise ruler. He led the Ottoman Empire to its peak, not only through military successes, but also through cultural and legal reforms. During his reign, Istanbul became one of the most important centers of science, art, and culture of the time. After becoming sultan, he rushed from campaign to expand the borders of the empire. Victories such as the conquest of Belgrade, the capture of Rhodes, and the Battle of Mohac were important milestones that demonstrated his might and military genius. However, Suleiman's greatness was not limited to conquests. He won the love of the people with his sense of justice and made many legal arrangements. His laws, known as Kanun-i Ali Osman, laid the foundation for justice in the empire. Suleiman was not only a warrior and lawmaker, but also a great patron of art and science. His palace was filled with the most important poets, writers, scientists, and artists of the time. Architect Sinan's works, such as the Suleymaniye Mosque, were a reflection of Suleiman's passion for art and architecture. The ambassadors and scientists he sent across the empire would return with new knowledge and technologies. In this way, the Ottoman Empire built its own civilization by blending the most advanced knowledge of the East and the West. Suleiman's reign is known as the Golden Age of the Ottoman Empire. During this period, trade routes were secured, cultural interactions increased, and people lived in prosperity. The story of Suleiman the Magnificent is an epic that shaped not only the history of the Ottoman Empire, but the history of the whole world. The empire under his rule was one of the greatest powers in the known world at the time. The Sultan's justice, courage, and vision brought the Ottoman Empire to the top, and his legacy lived on for centuries. Let's take a closer look at the life of this great sultan. From his accession to the throne to his great victories, from his domestic politics to his cultural legacy, let's discover the story of Suleiman together. Are you ready? Then let's begin. Suleiman the Magnificent was a child who made you feel that he was different from the day he was born. The year was 1494. The place was Trabzon. Suleiman was born in this city, where the rough waves of the Black Sea hit the shore. He was the first son of his father Yavuz Sultan Selim and his mother Ace Hafsa Sultan. At the time, no one could have predicted that this little boy would one day take the title of the Magnificent. But fate was weaving its web for him. Suleiman spent his childhood in the palace of Trabzon. At the time, this city was an important place guarding the eastern borders of the Ottoman Empire. While his father, Yavuz Sultan Selim, was the flag lord here, Suleiman grew up in the lap of nature and history. He was an intelligent and curious child from an early age. His education was given great importance. He took lessons from the best teachers in the palace. While learning Arabic, Persian, and Ottoman Turkish, he was also interested in mathematics, astronomy, and literature. These educations would help him become not only a warrior but also a wise leader. Suleiman's childhood years were also full of games and adventures. He would run through the narrow streets of Trabzon with his friends, exploring the four corners of the city. But the greatest adventure for him was the time he spent with his father. Yavuz Sultan Selim often took his son with him and taught him the affairs of state. Suleiman grew up observing his father's sense of justice and his way of governing. These experiences would shape his future style of governance. Suleiman also learned great lessons from his mother Hafsa Sultan during his childhood. She taught him compassion, patience, and responsibility towards his people. Inside the palace, Suleiman's heart was filled with love for his people and a sense of justice. His mother taught him that a leader is great not only through conquests, but also through his care and love for his people. In his youth, Suleiman was appointed as a Sanjak Bey in Manisa. Here, following in his father's footsteps, he learned the art of state administration and military service in greater depth. Manisa was a kind of preparation period for him. Here, he not only listened to the problems of the people and found solutions, but also learned how to protect the borders of the Ottoman Empire. Despite his young age, his leadership and sense of justice signaled that he would be a great sultan in the future. Suleiman's birth and childhood laid the foundation for his character and leadership qualities. He grew up as an intelligent, curious, just and devoted to his people. The lessons he learned from his father and mother gave him the qualities that would later earn him the title Suleiman the Magnificent. My children, these early years of Suleiman are one of the most important turning points of his life. Let's take a look at his youth and how he became a sultan. The year was 1513. Sultan Selim had ascended to the throne and appointed his son Suleiman as the governor of Manisa. Young Suleiman accepted this assignment with great seriousness, because he knew that his years in Manisa would be a kind of preparation period for the Sultanate. Manisa was one of the most important cities of the Ottoman Empire at that time. Its soils were fertile and its people were hardworking. Suleiman lived among the people here, listened to their problems, and sought solutions. It was here that he learned that the art of rulership is not only won on the battlefields, but also in the hearts of the people. Suleiman soon won the love of the people with his justice and mercy. Young Suleiman's education in Manisa was not limited to the lessons he received from the palace. Here he learned the practical aspects of state administration. Living among the people and finding solutions to their problems further strengthened young Suleiman's character and leadership qualities. He learned in Manisa how he would serve his people when he became sultan one day. Suleiman's years in Manisa were also the years when he honed his military skills. His father Yavuz Sultan Selim often wrote letters to him, giving him advice. In these letters he gave lessons on state administration, military strategies, and leadership. Suleiman read and practiced these lessons with great attention, each time becoming an even more knowledgeable and capable ruler. The years in Manisa also encompassed Suleiman's teenage years. During this period, he matured not only as a leader but also as a human being. His interest in art and literature was further strengthened here. He wrote poems and was interested in literature. In addition to Persian and Arabic, he also learned Latin and Greek. He read classical works in these languages and improved himself. This accumulation of knowledge contributed greatly to his future style of governance and understanding of the state. These years in Manisa shaped Suleiman's leadership qualities and character. Despite his young age, the justice and mercy he showed increased the love and trust of his people. With the experiences he gained here, Suleiman became ready to take the steps that would make the Ottoman Empire great in the future. The year 1509, Sultan Selim's son Suleiman was appointed as a young prince of Trabzon at the age of 14. It was a great responsibility for him, and at the same time a unique learning opportunity. Trabzon was located on the shores of the Black Sea, where the mountains meet the sea. Geographically strategically important, this city was like a fortress protecting the eastern borders of the Ottoman Empire. Suleiman would serve here not only as a ruler, but also as a defender. During his time as a Sanjaqbi in Trabzon, young Suleiman gained his first military and administrative experience under the supervision of his father Sultan Selim. Trabzon's challenging geography and borders provided the perfect backdrop for him to hone his military skills. Despite his young age, Suleiman grew up in his father's shadow and quickly mastered military strategies and battle tactics. Suleiman's first military experience was in Trabzon, where he fought against small-scale rebellions and raiders from the north of the Black Sea. During these struggles, the young prince learned how to lead his troops and the importance of making quick and correct decisions on the battlefield. He also learned in Trabzon that gaining the trust of the people and protecting them is one of the most important duties of a leader. The years he spent in Trabzon also honed Suleiman's administrative skills. He gained important experience not only in the military field but also in the administrative field. He listened to the problems of the people, made just decisions, and tried to ensure social peace. During this period, Solomon's understanding of justice and mercy took shape. By winning the love and respect of his people, he laid the foundations of a leader who would later become the great Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. Suleiman's education continued during his tenure as a Sanjak in Trabzon. He was taught Islamic law, literature, history, and science by teachers sent from the palace. He also increased his cultural and intellectual knowledge by learning Persian and Arabic. This knowledge would provide him with great advantages in state administration and diplomatic relations in the future. One day, while walking through the narrow streets of Trabzon, young Suleiman approached an old man and asked him, "Master, what is the most important quality of a leader?" The old man took a deep breath, looked at Suleiman, and said, "The most important quality of a leader is justice, my son. If you are just, your people will love and respect you. If you are merciful, you will receive their prayers. If you are brave, you will achieve victory in battlefields and peace in times of peace." These lessons, which he learned in Trabzon, were engraved in young Suleiman's mind and heart. It was this period that prepared him to become the head of one of the world's greatest empires in the future, and reinforced his character and leadership qualities. Now, my dear children, following Suleiman's early military experiences as a Sanjaqbi in Trabzon, we will examine his steps towards the Ottoman throne. Let us explore together the young prince's ascension to the throne and his early years as sultan. Ah, my children, now I am going to tell you about 1520, the fateful year that changed the fate of the Ottoman Empire. The death of Yavuz Sultan Selim and the accession of Suleiman to the throne were turning points both for Ottoman history and for world history. I will tell you about these important events as if you saw them with your eyes and felt them in your heart. Yavuz Sultan Selim, that stern and mighty sultan, was the fearful dream of the East and the West. However, like every mortal, his life was limited. In 1520, Sultan Selim fell ill. It is said that he was in great pain because of boils on his back. One day, Sultan Selim lay on his bed in the Edirne Palace and closed his eyes. He was surrounded by his viziers, commanders, and physicians. They were all in great anxiety. Sultan Selim's strong will was trying to keep him alive, but his body was getting ready to leave this world. It is said that in his last moments he whispered, "My state and nation are my trust." At that moment, a cloud of sadness covered the Ottoman Empire. The news of Yavuz Sultan Selim's death spread rapidly. A deep mourning began all over the Ottoman geography. However, a new sultan had to ascend the throne for the survival of the state. That person was Suleiman, who had been a Sanjaqbi in Trabzon and was known for his maturity and wisdom despite his young age. When Suleiman received the news of his father's death, he felt great sadness and responsibility. He immediately set off for Istanbul, to Topkapi Palace. Along the way, people crowded the roads to see their new sultan. When Suleiman saw the love and support of his people, his sense of responsibility grew stronger. As the new Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, he had to carry forward the legacy of his ancestors. When he arrived in Istanbul, a grand ceremony was held at Topkapi Palace. As Suleiman sat on his father's throne, his heart was filled with both deep sorrow as a son and great responsibility as a ruler. During the ceremony, in the presence of his viziers, commanders, and state officials, he swore an oath saying, "I will rule with justice and make the world tremble with my justice." This oath would guide him throughout his reign. Upon his ascension to the throne, Suleiman immediately set about the affairs of state. Taking over his father's legacy, he developed strategies to continue his policies of conquest and expand the empire's borders. First, he focused on ensuring peace and stability in the internal affairs of the state. He held frequent meetings with his viziers and advisors, listening to the problems in every corner of Ottoman territory and seeking solutions. Suleiman's accession to the throne marked the beginning of the golden age of the Ottoman Empire. His sense of justice, compassion, and might would resonate not only in the Ottoman lands but all over the world. This young sultan would later take the title of Kanuni and write his name in golden letters in world history. The conquest of Belgrade, one of the great campaigns that Sultan Suleiman II undertook after his ascension to the throne to show the power and might of the empire to the whole world, is one of the turning points in Ottoman history. As we explain the strategic importance of this event and how it happened, you will feel as if we were living those days together. The year was 1521. Sultan Suleiman gathered his army immediately after his ascension to the throne and decided to march westward, towards the heart of Europe. Belgrade was one of the most important fortresses in Europe at that time. It was not only a military base but also the gateway to the Balkans. Capturing this fortress would give the Ottoman Empire a great strategic advantage. When Sultan Suleiman set out for Belgrade at the head of his army, there was great excitement and determination among the Ottoman soldiers. This expedition was not only a conquest but also an opportunity for the young sultan to prove his leadership skills to the whole world. The fortress of Belgrade, at the confluence of the Sava and Danube rivers, had natural defensive advantages, but Suleiman's strategic acumen and the discipline of his army were enough to overcome these natural obstacles. When Suleiman reached Belgrade, he first laid siege to the castle. His army engineers identified its weak points and began preparations for the siege. The Ottoman artillery opened fire on the walls of the castle with their powerful cannons and started a massive destruction. These cannons were the most powerful weapons in the world at the time and made huge breaches in the walls. Soldiers under Suleiman's command made a great effort to infiltrate through these breaches and capture the castle. The siege lasted for weeks. Ottoman soldiers attacked the castle day and night, fighting to capture the castle by infiltrating through the breaches in the walls. The defenders of the castle were determined to resist to the end. However, they could not hold out much longer in the face of the determination and resolve of the Ottoman army. In the end, the castle of Belgrade fell to the Ottoman army. This great victory proved to the whole world the power and leadership skills of Sultan Suleiman. The conquest of Belgrade was an important turning point in the westward expansion of the Ottoman Empire. This victory also showed how disciplined and strong the Ottoman army was. The conquest of Belgrade was not only a military victory, it also strengthened the strategic position of the Ottoman Empire. Belgrade was the gateway to the Balkans, and this gateway was now under Ottoman control. This conquest gave the Ottomans a great advantage on the road to the heart of Europe. With this victory, Sultan Suleiman continued his westward march and won more great victories. When he ascended the throne, Sultan Suleiman wanted to rule not only on land but also in the seas. Rhodes Island was one of the key points of this strategic goal. The year was 1522. After his victory in Belgrade, Sultan Suleiman set his sights on Rhodes, one of the strongest fortresses in the Mediterranean. At that time, Rhodes was under the control of the Knights of St. John. These knights were harassing Ottoman merchant ships and preventing maritime trade by piracy in the Mediterranean. Suleiman decided to conquer Rhodes in order to put an end to this situation and establish full control in the Mediterranean. Sultan Suleiman prepared a large navy and army. The Ottoman navy was one of the most powerful naval forces in the world at that time. To further strengthen this navy, Suleiman had new ships built and put experienced sailors in command positions. At the head of the navy was Barbaros Hayreddin Pasha, who had great experience in naval warfare. When the Ottoman fleet set sail for Rhodes, there was great excitement and fear in the waters of the Mediterranean. The knights did not know how to stand against this great power. When the Ottoman ships approached Rhodes Island, they laid siege around the island and began to attack from land and sea. The siege of Rhodes was an arduous struggle that lasted for months. The knights defended the island with great skill. The Ottoman soldiers attacked the walls of the castle day and night, trying to make big breaches with their cannons. But the knights did their best to repel every attack. Sultan Suleiman changed his strategy as the siege lasted too long. He had secret tunnels dug to infiltrate the interior of the island and collapse the defenses from within. Thanks to these tunnels, Ottoman soldiers were able to attack the castle from places where the knights were not expecting them. At the same time, the Ottoman artillery targeted the weak points of the castle, causing massive destruction of the walls. Finally, after a long and difficult siege, Rhodes Island fell to the Ottomans. Although the knights put up a great resistance, they could no longer hold out against the Ottoman power. The fall of Rhodes proved to the world the power of the Ottoman navy and the determination of Suleiman. This great victory consolidated the Ottoman Empire's dominance on the seas. The conquest of Rhodes gave the Ottomans control of the Mediterranean and ensured the security of trade routes. With this victory, Sultan Suleiman showed that he was a great empire not only on land but also at sea. With this victory, the Ottoman navy grew stronger and became the most powerful naval force in the Mediterranean. My dear listeners, the conquest of Rhodes is one of Sultan Suleiman's greatest victories at sea. This victory consolidated the Ottoman Empire's naval power and gave it full control of the Mediterranean. With this victory, Sultan Suleiman proved his power at sea to the whole world and showed how powerful the Ottoman navy was. Sultan Suleiman was a ruler who made great conquests not only in the east but also in the west. During his reign, the Ottoman army advanced into the heart of Europe, winning great victories and consolidating Ottoman rule in Central Europe. The year 1526. After the victories in Belgrade and Rhodes, Sultan Suleiman set his sights on the heart of Europe, Hungary. The Kingdom of Hungary was one of the most powerful states in Europe at the time and posed a great threat to the Ottomans. The Hungarian king Lajos II tried to stop the Ottoman advance by allying with other kings in Europe. However, Sultan Suleiman ignored these threats and decided to march on Hungary by preparing a large army. When Sultan Suleiman marched from Istanbul with his army, there was great fear and anxiety in Europe. The Ottoman army was the most powerful and disciplined military force of that period. Sultan Suleiman led this army with great leadership and strategic genius. Ottoman soldiers, under the command of their sultan, were preparing for war like heroes. The Ottoman army crossed the Danube River and entered Hungarian territory. Sultan Suleiman knew that a great battle awaited them here. The Hungarian king Lajos II was determined to stop the Ottomans by gathering a large army. The two armies faced each other on the plain of Mohacs. This battle went down in the history books as the Battle of Mohacs and became one of the greatest victories of the Ottoman Empire. The Battle of Mohacs took place on August 29, 1526. The Ottoman army prepared for the battle with great strategic skill. Sultan Suleiman carefully positioned his troops and targeted the enemy's weak points. Ottoman artillery played an important role that changed the course of the battle. The roar of the cannons shook the battlefield and threw the Hungarian army into a panic. With the start of the battle, Ottoman soldiers broke through the enemy ranks with great speed. The Hungarian soldiers could not stand against the Ottomans. Sultan Suleiman, skillfully leading his army, encircled the enemy and won a great victory. The battle lasted only 2 hours, but these 2 hours caused a great change in the history of Europe. The Hungarian king Lajos II lost his life on the battlefield, and the Hungarian army suffered a great defeat. This victory consolidated the Ottoman Empire's dominance in Central Europe. Hungary joined the Ottoman lands and Budin, Budapest came under Ottoman control. With this victory, Sultan Suleiman gained great prestige in Europe and further expanded the borders of the Ottoman Empire. The annexation of Hungary to the Ottoman lands strengthened the strategic position of the Ottomans in Europe and showed the other European states how great the Ottoman power was. My dear listeners, the Battle of Mohacs and the conquest of Hungary is one of Sultan Suleiman's greatest victories. This victory showed how powerful the Ottoman Empire was in Europe and consolidated Ottoman rule in Central Europe. Sultan Suleiman was not only a warrior, but also a great strategist and leader. With this victory, the borders of the Ottoman Empire expanded even further, and Sultan Suleiman wrote his name in golden letters in history. We will talk about the siege of Vienna, the capital of the Habsburg dynasty, when Sultan Suleiman marched with his magnificent army to the heart of Europe, and the consequences of this siege. In 1529, Sultan Suleiman had consolidated his power in Europe with the Battle of Mohacs and annexed Hungary to the Ottoman Empire. However, after this great victory, he decided to take a step that would further shake the balance of power in Europe. The target was Vienna, the heart of the Habsburg Empire. Vienna was the key to Europe and the biggest obstacle to be overcome for the further expansion of the Ottoman Empire. Sultan Suleiman prepared a large army and marched from Istanbul. The Ottoman army was made up of experienced soldiers, skillfully used weapons and powerful cannons. As his comrades, janissaries, sipahis, artillerymen, and many more marched under the command of their sultan, waves of fear and anxiety spread across Europe. This great army, marching towards Vienna, was leaving a mark wherever it passed, showing the power and greatness of the Ottoman Empire. When Sultan Suleiman and his army reached Vienna, after a long and difficult journey, he set up a siege line around the city. The walls of Vienna were one of the strongest and most durable fortifications of the time. Inside, soldiers under the command of the Habsburg Emperor Ferdinand prepared to defend the city. The people of Vienna waited in great fear for the attack of the Ottoman army. The siege began, and the Ottoman cannons began to rain shells on the walls of Vienna with great noise. Ottoman engineers dug various tunnels and trenches to break the walls. However, the walls of Vienna proved to be stronger than expected. The city's defenders resisted with great courage and determination, trying to prevent the Ottomans from advancing. Throughout the siege, the weather conditions also worked against the Ottoman army. Rains, mud, and cold weather demoralized the soldiers and made the advance difficult. Sultan Suleiman tried to motivate his army despite all these difficulties. However, the walls of Vienna would not fall. The defenses in the city had stopped the Ottoman advance. After a long siege, Sultan Suleiman realized that Vienna would not fall and ordered a retreat. This decision was a great disappointment. The Ottoman army was returning empty-handed from a campaign it had started with great hope. However, this siege left deep traces in Europe. The siege of Vienna went down in history as an event that showed the power and audacity of the Ottoman Empire. The idea that the Ottomans were an unstoppable force became widespread in Europe. The defenders of Vienna celebrated, as if they had won a great victory. The Habsburg Empire grew stronger after this siege and consolidated its position in Europe. This failed siege was a turning point in the Ottoman Empire's policy of expansion. Sultan Suleiman learned lessons from this campaign and decided to focus more on the internal affairs of the empire. Vienna became an obstacle that halted the Ottoman advance in Europe, but under Sultan Suleiman's leadership, the power and prestige of the Ottoman Empire continued. Dear listeners, the Siege of Vienna occupies an important place in the history of the Ottoman Empire. It demonstrates the great ambitions and courage of Sultan Suleiman, but also how the balance of power in Europe changed. Now, let's take a look at Sultan Suleiman's other great campaigns and how they further strengthened the Ottoman Empire. Let's take a closer look at how this great leader governed and expanded his empire and ruled his people with justice. Dear listeners, I will now take you to the east of the Ottoman Empire, to the Persian campaigns that Sultan Suleiman led with great courage and determination. These campaigns reveal not only the power of the Ottomans, but also the strategic genius and determination of Sultan Suleiman. In this long and arduous struggle against the Safavid Empire, Sultan Suleiman went to great lengths to secure the eastern borders of his empire. In 1532, as tensions with the Safavids increased, Sultan Suleiman decided to launch the Persian campaign in order to protect the eastern borders and eliminate the Safavid threat. The Safavid state posed a major threat to the Ottoman Empire. Both sectarian differences and the struggle for regional dominance brought the two great empires face to face. The first campaign began in 1532. Sultan Suleiman set out for Safavid lands with his powerful army. Along the way, Ottoman soldiers advanced with great determination, winning victories against the Safavid forces. Sultan Suleiman achieved a great strategic success in this campaign and forced the Safavid forces to retreat. However, this was only the beginning of the struggle. In 1534, Sultan Suleiman once again organized a campaign against the Safavids. This time he had the opportunity to directly confront the Safavid ruler Shah Tahmasp. The Ottoman army advanced deep into Safavid territory and captured important cities such as Baghdad. The conquest of Baghdad once again proved Sultan Suleiman's power and authority. This great victory expanded the eastern borders of the Ottoman Empire and weakened the power of the Safavids. However, the Safavids were not an enemy that would give up easily. Shah Tahmasp continued to resist the Ottoman army using guerrilla warfare tactics. In 1548, Sultan Suleiman once again led an expedition against the Safavids. In this campaign, the Ottoman army captured important cities such as Tabriz and inflicted heavy losses on the Safavid forces. However, the Safavids continued to resist. In 1553, Sultan Suleiman launched his last major campaign against the Safavids. This campaign resulted in a great victory for the Ottoman Empire. The Safavids could no longer withstand the might of the Ottoman army and were forced to sign a peace treaty, signed in 1555. The Treaty of Amasya established a lasting peace between the Ottoman Empire and the Safavid Empire. This treaty secured the eastern borders of the Ottoman Empire and ended the threats of the Safavids. These long and difficult campaigns once again demonstrated Sultan Suleiman's leadership skills and strategic genius. The battles against the Safavids were part of the Ottoman Empire's effort to protect its eastern borders. Sultan Suleiman won great victories in these campaigns and expanded the borders of his empire. However, these victories also brought great sacrifices and hardships. My dear listeners, Sultan Suleiman's battles with the Safavids occupy an important place in the history of the Ottoman Empire. They were not only military victories, but also diplomatic successes and strategic moves. Sultan Suleiman, as a great leader, was always resolute and determined in his efforts to protect and expand his empire. The long and bloody struggles between the Ottoman Empire and the Safavid Empire finally ended in 1555 with the Treaty of Amasya. This treaty ended the long-standing conflicts between the two great empires and secured the eastern borders. Sultan Suleiman showed great leadership not only on the battlefield but also at the diplomatic table. The Treaty of Amasya defined the borders of the Ottoman Empire with the Safavids, ensuring a lasting peace for both sides. It secured the eastern borders of the Ottoman Empire and guaranteed non-interference in the internal affairs of the Safavid state. Thus, both sides reached an agreement that could ensure peace and stability in their territories. Sultan Suleiman displayed great strategic acumen during the signing of this treaty. In the negotiations with the Safavids, he protected the interests of the Ottoman Empire at the highest level and ensured the establishment of peace. The Treaty of Amasya not only secured the eastern borders of the Ottoman Empire, but also guaranteed internal peace and economic stability. This treaty was a testament to Sultan Suleiman's leadership skills and diplomatic success. The wars with the Safavids were part of the Ottoman Empire's effort to protect its eastern borders. In the process, Sultan Suleiman had won great victories and expanded the borders of his empire. However, peace and securing the borders ensured that these victories would be permanent. With the Treaty of Amasya, peace and security were established on the eastern borders of the Ottoman Empire. This led to a greater focus on the internal affairs of the Ottoman territories and increased economic prosperity. During this period of peace, Sultan Suleiman further strengthened his empire and increased the prosperity of his people. My dear listeners, Sultan Suleiman's great diplomatic victory with the Treaty of Amasya is one of the most important turning points in the history of the Ottoman Empire. This treaty not only secured the eastern borders, but also consolidated the internal peace and economic stability of the Ottoman Empire. Sultan Suleiman's leadership skills and diplomatic achievements made him one of the greatest leaders in history. My dear friends, I will now take you to the depths of the seas, to the blues of the Mediterranean. This time we will embark on a journey to those unforgettable victories that consolidated the Ottoman Empire's dominance in the seas, and in which Barbaros Hayreddin Pasha wrote a great epic of heroism. This epic has gone down in history as the cries of triumph echoing across the waves of the Mediterranean and as a testament to the Ottoman power at sea. Barbaros Hayreddin Pasha. As soon as you hear his name, you think of the fearless commander of the seas, a great leader respected even by pirates. Hayreddin Pasha, who started his adventure in the Aegean Sea, became the head of the Ottoman Navy and established one of the largest navies in the Mediterranean. Under his command, the Ottoman Navy shone as a great power in the Mediterranean and terrorized its enemies. In 1538, the great states of Europe, who wanted to shake the supremacy of the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, formed a crusader navy. Venice, the papacy, Spain, and Portugal united in this great armada, aiming to break the Ottoman Empire's power in the seas. It was against this united navy that Barbaros Hayreddin Pasha stood. Prevez. Yes, on September 27, 1538, off the coast of Preveza, the great battle that would change the fate of the seas began. With great strategy and courage, Barbaros Hayreddin Pasha fought against the crusader fleet that outnumbered him. That day, the waters of the Mediterranean were shaken with the cries of Ottoman victory. Thanks to Barbarossa's tactical acumen and the superior skills of his navy, the crusader fleet suffered a great defeat. The Battle of Preveza was not only a naval battle, but also a declaration of the Ottoman Empire's absolute domination of the seas. This victory consolidated the Ottoman supremacy in the Mediterranean and inscribed Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha's name in golden letters in history. The Mediterranean had now become an inland sea of the Ottoman Empire. Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha was not only a naval commander but also a great strategist and statesman. By modernizing the Ottoman navy, he further increased its power in the Mediterranean. Thanks to him, the Ottoman navy became one of the most powerful naval forces in Europe. The victory at Preveza cemented Ottoman dominance at sea and made Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha a legendary commander. After the battle, Ottoman supremacy in the Mediterranean became even stronger. Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha consolidated the Ottoman presence in the Mediterranean by expanding Ottoman dominance on the North African coast. Under his leadership, the Ottoman navy became the most powerful navy in the Mediterranean and struck fear into its enemies. My dear listeners, this great victory of Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha increased the power and influence of the Ottoman Empire at sea. The Battle of Preveza was an epic that consolidated the Ottoman supremacy at sea and inscribed Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha's name in golden letters in history. This great victory increased the power and influence of the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean and showed the power of the Ottoman navy to the whole world. The power of the Ottoman Empire was manifesting itself not only on the battlefields but also at the diplomatic tables. In such a period, the friendship between the Ottomans and France emerged on the stage of history as an important alliance that determined the fate of Europe. As a wise ruler, Sultan Suleiman knew the power not only of the sword but also of reason and diplomacy. In Europe, King Francois I of France was going through hard times under the pressure of Habsburg Emperor Karl V Charlemagne. The paths of these two great monarchs crossed with an alliance that would change the fate of Europe. Francois knocked on Sultan Suleiman's door, asking for help from the powerful ruler of the Ottoman Empire. Sultan Suleiman was not indifferent to this call. In 1536, the Treaty of Friendship and Trade signed between the Ottoman Empire and France initiated the first major Ottoman-French alliance in history. This treaty was recorded as one of the Ottoman Empire's diplomatic victories that upset the political balance in Europe. The treaty also granted French merchants extensive trade privileges in Ottoman territory, thus contributing greatly to the Ottoman economy. The reasons and consequences behind this alliance were profound. Francois needed Ottoman support to get rid of the pressure of the Habsburg Empire and reshape the balance of power in Europe. Sultan Suleiman, on the other hand, seized the opportunity to use these internal European conflicts in favor of the Ottomans to consolidate his power in the West and to directly influence the internal affairs of Europe. This alliance increased the Ottoman Empire's diplomatic influence in Europe and protected Ottoman political and commercial interests. The results of this alliance, my friends, were very positive for the Ottoman Empire and France. Francois, with Ottoman support, relieved the pressure of the Habsburg Empire, while Sultan Suleiman increased Ottoman influence in Europe. Thanks to this alliance, the Ottoman navy had a wider range of action in the Mediterranean, using French ports. At the same time, the Ottoman-French alliance also put pressure on other states in Europe, reinforcing the Ottoman Empire's diplomatic power. This diplomatic success of the Ottoman Empire was not limited to France. Sultan Suleiman expanded the Ottoman influence in the West by establishing strategic alliances with other states in Europe. Friendly relations with England, the Netherlands, and some Italian states further increased the Ottoman diplomatic power in Europe. During this period, the Ottoman Empire's success on the diplomatic stage was reinforced not only by military victories, but also by clever diplomatic moves. Sultan Suleiman's success in the field of diplomacy showed that the Ottoman Empire was not only a war empire, but also an important actor on the world stage with its rational and strategic diplomacy. Thanks to these alliances, the Ottoman Empire became a power that could directly influence the internal affairs of Europe and determine the political balance of the continent. My dear friends, these diplomatic achievements of Sultan Suleiman contributed to the golden age of the Ottoman Empire. These strategic alliances in Europe increased the power and influence of the Ottoman Empire, expanding its borders and sphere of influence, Sultan Suleiman's diplomatic genius cemented the Ottoman Empire's place on the world stage and consolidated its power. Ah, my dear friends, now I am going to take you beyond the Mediterranean Sea, to distant and exotic lands, to the depths of the Indian Ocean. This is the story of the Ottoman Empire's fierce struggle to control the powerful and rich spice trade routes. In the 16th century, the Indian Ocean attracted merchants and sailors from all over the world. This vast ocean was a new frontier that the Ottomans coveted in order to expand their maritime dominance. These voyages were the Ottomans' fierce struggle against Portugal and their quest to capture the riches of the Indian Ocean. As the mighty ruler of the Ottoman Empire, Sultan Suleiman aimed to rule not only on land but also at sea. To this end, the Ottoman navy confronted the Portuguese on the west coast of India, the south of the Arabian Peninsula, and the east coast of Africa. These naval campaigns were part of the Ottoman Empire's larger struggle for control of the Indian Ocean. The Ottoman Empire aimed to keep its finger on the pulse of trade by controlling the spice route. This route started from India, went through Arabia, and then to Europe via the Mediterranean Sea. However, this valuable trade route was under the control of the Portuguese. After Vasco da Gama's arrival in India, the Portuguese had established strong bases along the Indian coast and the eastern coast of Africa. These bases reinforced Portugal's dominance in the spice trade. It was at this time that the Ottoman Empire emerged as a new naval power in the Indian Ocean. In 1538, a navy under the command of the famous Ottoman Admiral Hadim Suleiman Pasha set sail for the Indian Ocean. This was the first major Ottoman naval expedition in the Indian Ocean and marked the beginning of the struggle against the Portuguese. Hadim Suleiman Pasha reached the Indian Ocean by crossing the Gulf of Aden and started a major war against the Portuguese off the coast of India. This was the first major clash between the Ottoman and Portuguese navies in the struggle for supremacy in the Indian Ocean. Suleiman Pasha laid siege to the Dayu fortress on the coast of Gujarat in India. However, he was not successful against the resistance of the Portuguese and had to retreat. This siege went down in history as the first major naval battle of the Ottoman Navy in the Indian Ocean. My dear friends, these naval expeditions were not only for military achievements, but were also part of the Ottoman Empire's trade and economic policy. The Ottomans aimed to gain a share of the spice trade in the Indian Ocean and to expand their trade network in the Mediterranean. To this end, they established strong bases in the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf and tried to control the trade routes in the Indian Ocean. The Ottoman Empire's struggle in the Indian Ocean continued in the 1550s. The famous Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis sailed from the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean in 1552. Piri Reis organized successful naval expeditions against the Portuguese off the coasts of Oman and the west coast of India. These campaigns consolidated the Ottoman Navy's presence in the Indian Ocean and dealt a major blow to the Portuguese. The Ottoman Empire's naval campaigns in the Indian Ocean were not limited to military successes. These expeditions also demonstrated the Ottoman Empire's success in the field of science and cartography. Piri Reis' famous map went down in history as a product of the discoveries and naval expeditions made during this period. This map demonstrated the Ottoman Empire's maritime know-how and its dominance in the Indian Ocean. My dear friends, these struggles of the Ottoman Empire in the Indian Ocean proved that the empire was a great power not only on land but also at sea. Sultan Suleiman's wise strategies and the courage of the Ottoman sailors made this great struggle in the Indian Ocean written in golden letters in history. These campaigns cemented the Ottoman Empire's role in world trade, while also demonstrating the empire's maritime power and competence. Following these great struggles, the Ottoman Empire's adventure in the Indian Ocean would continue and the empire would further consolidate its dominance in the seas. Let's turn the other pages of this great story together and discover Sultan Suleiman's other victories at sea. My dear friends, I will now take you to the heart of Europe, to the lands of Hungary. This is the story of the Ottoman Empire's struggle to consolidate its dominance in Hungary and the conquest of Budin. The year was 1541. Sultan Suleiman Khan was at the head of his throne, a great leader, eager to expand Ottoman territory and further strengthen his empire. Hungary was a strategically important region for the Ottoman Empire. With the defeat and death of the Hungarian king Lajos II at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, most of Hungary was under Ottoman rule. However, Budin, today's Budapest, was still not fully under Ottoman control. This city was of great importance as the heart of Hungary and a strategic stronghold. The conquest of Budin would cement the Ottoman Empire's power in Europe and consolidate Ottoman rule in Central Europe. In 1541, a political crisis broke out in Budin. The ruler of the Principality of Erdel, which controlled eastern Hungary, was claiming control over the administration in Budin. This situation threatened the balance of power in the region. Sultan Suleiman seized this opportunity and took action to annex Budin to Ottoman territory. Sultan Suleiman gathered his army and marched on Budin. When he approached Budin, the resistance was quite weak due to the confusion and political crisis in the city. The Ottoman army besieged the city without encountering any major resistance. Budin castle surrendered in a short time under the siege of Ottoman soldiers. When Sultan Suleiman entered the city, he greeted the people and declared that Budin was now part of the Ottoman Empire. This conquest was an important step in consolidating the power of the Ottoman Empire in Europe. My dear friends, the conquest of Budin was not only a military victory. It also meant that the Ottoman Empire expanded its cultural and political influence. Budin was reorganized under Ottoman rule and the city was rebuilt with Ottoman architecture and culture. Mosques, madrasas, and baths rose all over the city. Budin became one of the most important cities of the Ottoman Empire in Europe. This victory once again demonstrated the military genius and strategic acumen of Sultan Suleiman. The conquest of Budin not only consolidated the Ottoman Empire's dominance in Europe, but also brought a large part of Hungary under Ottoman control. Following this victory, Sultan Suleiman appointed an experienced commander as governor of Budin and left a strong garrison to ensure the city's security. The conquest of Budin was an important turning point in the Ottoman Empire's advance in Europe. It also strengthened Ottoman relations with other cities and states in Europe. Budin became one of the most important bases of the Ottoman Empire in Europe and a symbol of Ottoman dominance. My dear friends, the conquest of Budin was a great victory that once again proved the power and might of the Ottoman Empire. Under the leadership of Sultan Suleiman, the Ottoman army continued its advance into the heart of Europe and expanded the borders of the empire. After this great victory, the Ottoman Empire's power in Europe was further consolidated and Budin became a part of Ottoman culture and architecture. This story is a reflection of the military achievements and strategic genius of the Ottoman Empire. The conquest of Budin was not only a military victory, but also the consolidation of the Ottoman Empire's dominance in Europe. Let's continue to explore Sultan Suleiman's other great victories and the glorious history of the Ottoman Empire together. Dear friends, I will now tell you the story of the Zigetvar Campaign, the last campaign of Suleiman the Magnificent, one of the greatest sultans of the Ottoman Empire, and the end of his legendary life. If you are ready, we are going on a journey into the depths of time. The year is 1566. The lands of the Ottoman Empire had spread to 3 continents and Sultan Suleiman was getting old. But despite his age, he was still ruling his empire with great determination and courage, fighting against his enemies. The Zigetvar Campaign was to be the last great campaign of the Magnificent. In 1566, Sultan Suleiman targeted the Zigetvar castle in the south of Hungary. This fortress was at a strategic point that threatened the Ottoman Empire's advance in Central Europe. The castle was defended by a Croatian commander named Nikola Zrinji. Zrinji was a leader known for his courage and resistance, and was determined to stand up to the Ottoman army. Sultan Suleiman gathered his army and marched on Zigetvar. The old sultan was exhausted from illness, but he nevertheless led the campaign. The Ottoman army laid siege to Zigetvar Castle, and a great battle ensued. The castle defenders put up great resistance against the Ottoman army. The fighting lasted for days and both sides suffered great losses. Sultan Suleiman was unable to lead his army into battle due to the intensity of the war and the progression of his illness. However, he continued to lead the army and gave morale to his soldiers. The castle refused to fall despite the constant attacks of the Ottoman army. Sultan Suleiman died in front of Zigetvar without seeing the victory. His death caused great sadness in the army, but this was hidden and the soldiers continued the war without any loss of morale. With the death of Suleiman the Magnificent, the viziers and commanders managed to hide his death from the soldiers and enemies. The Sultan's body was carefully kept in his Ottoman, and the attacks on Zigetvar Castle continued. Finally, the Ottoman army captured the castle, and the castle, which Nikola Zrinji had resisted with courage, was annexed to Ottoman territory. My dear friends, the death of Sultan Suleiman was a great loss for the Ottoman Empire. His leadership and rule had brought the empire to its peak and expanded the Ottoman territory. The Zigetvar Campaign went down in history as his last great victory. Although Sultan Suleiman died at Zigetvar, the victory of the Ottoman army continued his legacy and power. During his 46-year reign, Suleiman the Magnificent transformed the Ottoman Empire into a great power. He won the love of his people with his justice, courage, and leadership. With his death, the rule of the Ottoman Empire changed, but his legacy and his victories sustained the power and glory of the empire for many years to come. I will now describe the magnificent architectural projects of Suleiman the Magnificent during his reign and his contributions in the fields of art, science, and law. During the reign of this great sultan, the Ottoman Empire was known not only for military victories, but also for cultural and intellectual developments. From his first years on the throne, Suleiman the Magnificent aimed to build works that would leave a mark in every corner of the empire. The most magnificent of these is undoubtedly the Suleimani Mosque, which adds a magnificent elegance to the skyline of Istanbul. This mosque is considered one of Mimar Sinan's masterpieces, and thousands of workers, craftsmen, and artists worked on its construction. The mosque served not only as a place of worship, but also as an educational and cultural center. It contains various buildings such as madrasas, a hospital, a library, and a bathhouse. The Suleimani Mosque is considered one of the pinnacles of Ottoman architecture and immortalizes the name of Sultan Suleiman. The close cooperation and friendship between Mimar Sinan and Sultan Suleiman during the construction of the mosque resulted in one of the most beautiful examples of Ottoman architecture. Mimar Sinan worked meticulously on every detail of the mosque, turning the Suleimani Mosque into a masterpiece of art with its acoustic features, light plays, and aesthetic beauties. Walking around the courtyard of the mosque, one can feel Sinan's mastery and Suleiman's vision. However, Suleiman's architectural projects were not limited to the Suleimani Mosque. He built many mosques, bridges, caravanserais, aqueducts, and madrasas in Istanbul, Edirne, Mecca, and Medina. These works spread all over the empire, facilitated the lives of the people, and symbolized the power and wealth of the Ottoman Empire. In addition to his architectural projects, Sultan Suleiman also made great contributions in the fields of art, science, and law. Kanuni attached great importance to the patronage of art and artists. During his reign, many poets, painters, calligraphers, and musicians took part in the Ottoman court. Among them were great poets such as Fuzuli, Baki, and Hayali. Suleiman himself was a poet, and his poems, written under the pen name Muhibbi, are among the most important works of Ottoman divan literature. In addition to art, great progress was made in the fields of science and medicine. There were many scholars working in the fields of astronomy, mathematics, and medicine in Suleiman's palace. These scholars made important contributions to the Ottoman Empire by following the developments in Europe and Asia. The libraries established by Suleiman are of great importance for the preservation and transmission of this knowledge to future generations. One of the most important contributions of Suleiman the Magnificent was in the field of law. During his reign, the legal system of the Ottoman Empire underwent a major revision and new laws were enacted to ensure justice. These laws aimed to establish a fair and equal order for both Muslims and non-Muslims. For this reason, Suleiman was nicknamed Kanuni and recognized for his efforts to ensure the rule of law. Suleiman's laws had a great impact not only in the Ottoman lands but also in other Islamic countries. His regulations were felt in every aspect of social and economic life, and important steps were taken for the welfare and security of the people. Ensuring justice increased the people's trust in the Sultan and strengthened the internal peace of the Ottoman Empire. My dear friends, the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent is remembered not only for military victories, but also for architectural masterpieces, great advances in art and science, and reforms to ensure justice. His legacy symbolizes one of the most brilliant periods of the Ottoman Empire and gives us the opportunity to continue in the footsteps of this great sultan from the depths of history. My dear friends, I am going to talk about the most special and yet complex relationship of Suleiman the Magnificent. This is the epic love story with Hurrem Sultan. This story resonates like a fairy tale in the splendor and mystery of the Ottoman palace. Hurrem Sultan is a woman who changed the course of history with her story that started as a mere concubine and left a great impact on the harem and palace of the Ottoman Empire. Hurrem Sultan, originally Roxolana, was a Polish girl who was captured and brought to the Ottoman court. Hurrem, who attracted the attention of Sultan Suleiman, in a short time with her beauty and intelligence, managed to leave deep traces in his heart. Unlike the other women in the harem, Hurrem Sultan's intelligence and charm carried her to a special place, and she quickly became Suleiman's favorite concubine. Suleiman and Hurrem's love did not only remain within the palace walls, but became a story that spread throughout the empire. Suleiman's love for Hurrem led him to value her not only as a concubine but also as a wife and advisor. This was an unusual event at the Ottoman court, as Hurrem Sultan was the first concubine to be officially married to Sultan Suleiman. Hurrem Sultan's influence in the palace was not only limited to her closeness to Suleiman, but also led to major changes in the harem. The harem was one of the most mysterious and powerful places in the inner world of the Ottoman Empire. Intrigues, power struggles, and love stories took place here. By strengthening her position in the harem, Hurrem made skillful moves to protect her own interests and the future of her children. Hurrem Sultan's influence in the palace and the harem stemmed from her intelligence, determination, and deep love for Suleiman. Hurrem played an important role not only as a love object but also as a political figure. Her letters to Suleiman show how well informed she was on political matters. Hurrem's love and loyalty to Suleiman allowed her to advise him on many issues, thus giving her a great advantage over the other women in the harem. Hurrem Sultan's influence was not only limited to the harem, but was also felt outside the palace. Suleiman's love for Hurrem enabled her to carry out many social projects and charitable works. Hurrem built many charitable institutions in Istanbul, such as mosques, baths, and madrasas that bear her name. These buildings show her philanthropy and her commitment to the people of the empire. My dear friends, the love of Suleiman the Magnificent and Hurrem Sultan is one of the most important and fascinating stories in Ottoman history. This love was not only limited to the love of two people for each other, but also changed the fate of the empire and the dynamics of the palace. With her intelligence, beauty, and determination, Hurrem Sultan left an unforgettable mark on history and earned a special place in Sultan Suleiman's heart. Ah, my dear friends, now I will tell you about the place of Suleiman the Magnificent. Suleiman the Magnificent, in the history of the Ottoman Empire and the world. He was a ruler not only of his time, but a ruler who will be remembered in the pages of history in golden letters for centuries to come. Kanuni was not only a leader but also an artist, a jurist and a strategist. His era is known as the most glorious period of the Ottoman Empire. Let's explore his legacy and the impact it has had to this day. When Suleiman ascended the throne in 1520 as the 10th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, the empire was already strong. But under his leadership, the Ottoman Empire reached its peak in both territory and power. Suleiman's military genius pushed the borders of the expanding Ottoman territories even further in Europe, Asia, and Africa. The conquest of Belgrade, the capture of Rhodes, and his victories in Hungary are just a few examples of his military achievements. His storming of the gates of Vienna showed the world the extent of Ottoman power in Europe. However, Kanuni's reign was not limited to victories on the battlefields. He was also a great legal reformer. Suleiman played a major role in ensuring justice by restructuring the legal system of the Ottoman Empire. His laws earned him the title of Kanuni. These laws formed the basis of the Ottoman legal system not only during his reign but also in the following centuries. Ensuring justice ensured peace and order in every corner of the empire. Suleiman the Magnificent also attached great importance to art and science. Under his patronage, Istanbul became one of the most important centers of culture and art in the world. He allowed great geniuses like Mimar Sinan to grow up. The Suleimani Mosque is one of the most magnificent buildings of his era and still adorns the skyline of Istanbul. The promotion of the arts and sciences increased the cultural wealth of the Ottoman Empire and consolidated its influence in the world. Under Suleiman's rule, the Ottoman Empire became a major economic power, located at the crossroads of trade routes. Its location on the Silk Road increased the wealth of the empire. The revival of trade between Europe, Asia, and Africa ushered in a period of great prosperity in the Ottoman lands. This economic power formed the basis of Suleiman's military and political successes. The legacy of Suleiman the Magnificent remains vibrant today. Architectural monuments built during his reign still stand in Istanbul and other Ottoman cities. The Suleimani Mosque, Topkapi Palace, and many other buildings are concrete examples of his contributions to art and culture. In addition, his laws and sense of justice have inspired today's legal systems. My dear friends, Suleiman the Magnificent was not only a ruler, but also a culture bearer, a defender of justice, and a civilization builder. His legacy transcended the borders of the Ottoman Empire and spread all over the world. Today, his name is still associated with splendor and wisdom. The life and achievements of Kanuni remind us of the importance of justice, art, and science throughout history. Now, as we move towards the end of this great monarch's life and legacy, let us reflect on the lessons and values he left us. Suleiman the Magnificent, as a leader who took his place in the golden pages of history, shines a light on us from the past. That is why learning about his life and legacy not only increases our knowledge of history, but also shapes our future. Dear friends, as we approach the end of the life of Suleiman the Magnificent, it is time to share with you a general summary of his unique life. His life is like an epic, each moment of which determined the turning points of history and each step shaped the future. The story of this great ruler is a legend engraved in golden letters, not only in the history of the Ottoman Empire, but also in the history of the whole world. Suleiman was born in Trabzon in 1494. As a child, he showed the signs of a great leader. His period as a Sanjaqbi in Manisa became a school for him to develop his administrative skills. Young Suleiman was prepared for the throne with the education and experience he gained during his years in Manisa. After the death of his father Yavuz Sultan Selim in 1520, he ascended the Ottoman throne and began a long and brilliant reign. Suleiman's reign began with the conquest of Belgrade. This victory was the first step in his strategic moves in Europe. The subsequent conquest of Rhodes Island consolidated the power of the Ottoman navy and ensured its supremacy in the Mediterranean. Suleiman increased the Ottoman power, not only on land but also at sea, turning the Mediterranean into an Ottoman lake. Turning to the heart of Europe, Suleiman consolidated Ottoman rule in Central Europe with his victory over Hungary. However, his attempt to besiege Vienna in 1529 ended in failure. Despite this defeat, his influence in Europe and the power of the Ottomans remained an indisputable fact. In the East, Suleiman engaged in relentless struggles against the Safavid Empire. The Iranian campaigns and wars resulted in the securing of the eastern borders. The Treaty of Amasya, signed in 1555, was the guarantee of peace in the East. Suleiman's successes in the East and West were a testament to his military genius and strategic intelligence. Suleiman's reign was not only characterized by wars. He made great contributions to art, science, and law. The Suleimani Mosque, built under the leadership of Mimar Sinan, is one of the most important works immortalizing his name. In addition, the victory over the Crusader navy under the command of Barbaros Hayreddin Pasha consolidated Ottoman supremacy in the Mediterranean. The alliance with Francois demonstrated how powerful Ottoman diplomacy in Europe was. The Ottoman naval campaigns in the Indian Ocean and the struggles with Portugal further increased Suleiman's influence in the world. The conquest of Budin in 1541 consolidated Ottoman rule in Hungary. In 1566, Suleiman passed away during the Zigetvar Campaign. However, even his death could not stop the Ottoman army. The victory was won after Suleiman's death and crowned with his name. Suleiman the Magnificent was not only a sultan, but also a culture bearer, a defender of justice, and a great civilization builder. The laws he enacted formed the basis of the Ottoman legal system, not only during his reign but also in the following centuries. His contributions to the arts and sciences enhanced the cultural richness of the Ottoman Empire and left his mark on world history. Even today, Suleiman's legacy remains vibrant. The Suleimani Mosque, Topkapi Palace, and many other buildings are concrete examples of his contributions to art and culture. His name is synonymous with splendor and wisdom. Suleiman's life reminds us of the importance of justice, art, and science. My dear friends, Suleiman the Magnificent was such a ruler. His life and legacy remind us how important justice, art, and science have been throughout history. Suleiman the Magnificent, as a leader who has taken his place in the golden pages of history, shines a light on us from the past. Learning about his life and legacy not only increases our knowledge of history, but also shapes our future. It has been a great pleasure to share this long and glorious story with you, and now it is time to say goodbye, to take you from the depths of history and return you to the reality of today. Do not forget that learning about the great figures of history, understanding them and keeping their legacy alive is one of our most important duties. The life of Suleiman the Magnificent shows us how to fulfill this duty in the best way possible. I wish you all a peaceful and learning-filled day. See you in other stories. Goodbye.